And now I want to introduce our next speaker, Ray Leach. Ray is the leader and visionary of Jumpstart. And Jumpstart, for those of you who don't know, is a Cleveland-based nonprofit venture development organization that has gained national reputation for its innovative economic development outcomes. Jumpstart focuses on working with emerging startup technology-based firms here in Northeastern Ohio. They also help to build robust entrepreneurial economies in communities across the United States. Ray has worked hard to build public, private, and philanthropic relationships to bring national funds to Northeastern Ohio. Ray is a member of the United States Commerce Department's National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Ray was also a 2012 winner of the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, and he will be speaking to us today about innovation in Northeastern Ohio. So please help me welcome Ray Leach.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. See a lot of friends in the audience. If nothing else, I'm excited about the opportunity to talk about the work Jumpstart's doing to help young technology and innovation companies, but also innovations that are in many of your businesses today that you might be thinking through new business models that could help you monetize those innovations and also, of course, since I lead an economic development entity, focus on how this can create economic wealth and jobs in Northeast Ohio. So I know already today you've had a chance to hear from the folks at Nottingham Spurk, and there's been some dialogue around innovation and obviously the correlation to new products, new services, new innovations to your core business. I'm going to speak on the same issue, and of course, you can hear 10, 15 different topics or 10 to 15 subjects on innovation in general, but really what I want to get down to is to talk the nitty-gritty of why innovation is so critical to your core business, as well as to the opportunities to make money and do good in Northeast Ohio. So, I'm a native of Northeast Ohio. I actually grew up in Akron and have started my career as an entrepreneur. And so I'm a native of the area. And I've watched as a business person, well, first as a student and then as an early person working for IBM and ultimately as an entrepreneur, that Northeast Ohio has really, really been challenged around economic development issues. And what I've come to learn over the last 10 years is I've been involved in more of the, not just the practical side of working with companies, but also looking at kind of the historical macroeconomic trends of industries in Northeast Ohio. One of the fundamental things we're dealing with as a community and as individual businesses is that if you look over the last 30 years, all net new job growth in the United States has come from firms that are 5 years old or younger. So when we think about the traditional industries and the driver industries for a region like Northeast Ohio, and of course there's many others out there, that tells a tale about why places like Northeast Ohio, which were the Silicon Valley of the last generation of the 19th century and the first really 30 years of the 20th century, why we've been so challenged of late. Because innovation has not been a core characteristic or attribute that many, many firms in our communities have needed to focus on, let alone have focused on over time. I know many of you have a sense of how many Fortune 500 companies were here 25, 30 years ago as opposed to today. Well, those Fortune 500 companies created in Northeast Ohio were really generated between 1870 and 1930, and all of those companies were radically innovative. But over the course of 3, 4, 5 generations of business, they've needed to be less innovative. We had global competition, all these issues and drivers that have raised challenges for these large businesses. And just like any ecological system, things die, new things are born. But if you're in a community that really had the wealth to not need to innovate, to not need to think out of the box, you had no necessarily motivation to do that. So the culmination of this reality in places like Northeast Ohio have led us to really being challenged from an economic development perspective. When I first got involved in this idea of a nonprofit that would focus on helping startup tech companies in Northeast Ohio. One of the catalytic activities or conversations in our region was from 1990 to 2002, according to Entrepreneur Magazine, if you looked at the largest 61 regions of the United States, Northeast Ohio was the worst performing entrepreneurial community 10 out of 12 years in a row, ranking no higher than 57th out of the 61 regions. How in the world could that have been the case? Well, it really is macroeconomic trends. We had large companies working in manufacturing, or a lot of manufacturing industries, companies that had created huge amounts of wealth, huge number of jobs, and instead of really beginning to think differently about how to innovate, diversify, and grow their companies in the mid-'80s, in the early '90s, you know, the IT revolution that changed our country completely skipped Northeast Ohio. From a standpoint of new firms, of course, there's the Highland software, so you know I might use a few hyperboles here, but principally, all the economic growth in the dot-com rush-up completely skipped this part of the country. That was a huge opportunity for us to innovate, particularly around growing young firms, new products, new innovations that we missed. So from 1990 to 2002, not enough changed in Northeast Ohio. And so if you looked at the number of new companies, the percentage of employees working for those firms, the amount of private investment, venture capital, the number of bankruptcies, and per capita income, we were basically in the bottom decile, or in 10 out of the 12 years, the worst performing region in the country. So what happened in the public and private and philanthropic community was we've got to get our game on to try to accelerate and advance the opportunities for anyone in our community, and we certainly have. I mean, one of the most interesting things in Jumpstart's first year, back in 2004, is there was a sense of, well, you know, the ideas aren't here. The innovation, the understanding of connection to industry and to billion-dollar markets in early-stage companies isn't in Northeast Ohio. Absolutely wrong. 900 entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs approached Jumpstart in about our first 120 days of existence in the summer of 2004. So what we were missing and what we had at scale in the last 25 years of the 19th century, and the first really 30 years of the 20th century, was an environment where innovation, risk-taking, entrepreneurship, new product development, that's what everybody does. That is just like, that was in the DNA of our community. And by 2002, we had no place in the community, or no one really owned or had ownership in and around how do we help aspiring innovators, scientists, technologists, business people who have a new idea and maybe want to spin it out of a big company or want to start it from scratch. Where do they go? Not only do where they go where they can find like brethren or someone who's going to welcome them with open arms intellectually, but where also can we go to find the capital to invest the first $200,000, $300,000, $500,000, $600,000 in these kinds of businesses. And so really that market gap, and I'm spending a little extra time on this because there's a parallel market gap with the established companies as well, which many, I'm sure you in the room, are with a more established company who has perhaps a very interesting, innovative, creative idea, but you don't have the capital or you don't have the experience necessarily to take that to the next level. And Jumpstart, with our partners, not only Jumpstart, but also in partnership with other collaborators in the region, is going to really begin to focus on that space as well, as opposed to only the tech space. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's talk about, you know, why innovative companies are so important to Northeast Ohio's economy, because ultimately I am judged by how much private capital are we able to help entrepreneurs in Northeast Ohio attract, how many jobs those companies are creating, and of course you can understand, in your case it's all about profitability, I get that, but there is a correlation, maybe not overnight, but over time, profitability to job creation, they're pretty highly correlated. The more successful and more profitable your businesses are, in many cases, there's a strong correlation to job growth. So if you look across the country today, well, this is as of 2011, and that's obviously through the recession time period. If you look at firms that are in high-tech space that are young, High tech also highly correlates to job growth. So we have kind of comparison between, just because you're a young company, if you're a young company and you don't have anything that, or a spin out or something that's new, and you don't have any sort of dynamic innovation or unique aspect to your business, you're much less likely to create jobs and create economic impact. So again, Jumpstart in our work with startups and also with established companies is really looking for businesses that are young, have a differentiated product opportunity, that capital, energy, interest can more easily be accessed and leveraged. So if you said today, you know, these young companies, and right now Jumpstart's portfolio companies, we've invested in 76 companies, and as of today, those companies have a couple hundred openings right now for their payrolls. 87% of technology startups this year are planning to hire folks, and for every innovation-oriented or technology-oriented job that's created in the US economy, it's creating 5 additional jobs in the service economy or the related economies. So the more successful places like Northeast Ohio are on leveraging the innovations, the thoughts, and the ideas that you have in your businesses or in your heads, the more successful we're going to be as a regional economy. So high-tech startups are also forming at a much higher rate than other private sector businesses, which is good. And now, you know, Northeast Ohio, the last time Entrepreneur Magazine ran that study, you know, so we were hoping they would continue to run the study forever. Well, they stopped in 2007, and Northeast Ohio was 13th. So we went from 61 to 13 in 5 years. We were between Boston and San Diego in the last year they ran that study. So we made a huge amount of progress in a relatively short amount of time. And one of the other interesting aspects to the work, because now we're working in 15 other regions across the country, is that we caught the cold. Actually, we had pneumonia. We were kind of on our deathbed way before the rest of the country. So what's been so interesting is in the late 90s, early 2000s, we started to figure out, you know, we've got to invest in a new way to think about business growth. We started doing that in 2004. We had enough of a runway before the 2008 recession where we started to generate a lot of momentum and a lot of outcomes. But starting in then in 08, in 09, and 010, places like Raleigh-Durham, Research Triangle Park, thriving regional economies have come to learn a lot of the same lessons that Northeast Ohio learned in the 90s and 2000, and that is if you don't have a dynamic, action-oriented, outcome-driven, organic economic development environment, you will never create net new jobs. So as an advocate who kind of sits between public, philanthropic, private money, if it's my job or my ultimate responsibility to try to help companies create jobs, that's where the magic is. That's where we have to invest dollars, is really leveraging the technology and innovation. So Jumpstart's in the business as a nonprofit. We're helping about 600 companies a year. And some of these things are spin-outs of Fortune 500 companies. But most of them are an individual or 2 or 3 people, maybe who work together in a different corporate environment or in a garage, and they're saying, okay, I have an innovative idea, I have I think it addresses a big market, I have no idea where to go with this. You know, I've never worked for a startup, you know, I don't really know much about angel and venture capital. How do I begin to fill out, form, and shape how I can think about the opportunity, let alone how I can make it real. So we're, again, a nonprofit out there providing about 50,000 hours of technical assistance to entrepreneurs in Northeast Ohio for free on an annual basis. We also play other roles in the region that I think it'd be important for you to kind of get a sense of. One is as an advisor. So we are out there, you know, even if you have an idea around an opportunity. You know, we have a staff, both at Jumpstart and with our collaborating organizations that I'm going to talk more about, that could be a great sounding board for you as you are, whether it's individually or at your firm, are contemplating new, innovative ideas, thoughts, and you're probably wondering, where am I going to find maybe the human capital, the financial capital, the like-minded folks in the community that are working in those same areas. So we're an advisor to, we worked with 600 companies, but realistically we're advising a couple hundred firms a year. And you know, we've had over about 32,000 folks come to one of our events in the last 4 or 5 years. So we're out there, and our role and purpose is to be a connector to folks that are looking for these kinds of resources. Of course, we're an investor. I mentioned we've made investments. We've invested $30 million in 76 companies. Thank you, by the way. About half that money came from the state of Ohio, really came from you as a taxpayer. So Jumpstart has won multiple Third Frontier Awards, which is an incredibly competitive process that we run through every year to try to win dollars that leverage those dollars to attract private investment. So the $30 million that we've invested in 76 companies has leveraged just over $610 million in private money. And those companies to date have created about a little over 3,000 jobs. So this idea that economic growth, catalytic, how do we attract private sector, where do you start? That's where our investment dollars historically have gone into things that solve the if not but for problem. If not but for this 400 grand, and if not but for a person at Jumpstart who's going to work with me for the next year or 2 or 3 for free, I'm never going to be able to get this thing to the next level. That's where Jumpstart is honed in on. If we were to sit down and you had an opportunity that made sense for a venture capitalist or an angel investor right now, it's our job to introduce you to them and get out of the way. We're not supposed to invest in the things that are ready for the private sector with the funds that we've invested to date. It's our opportunity to solve the if not but for kind of issue in the market. And without that money, and in a place like Northeast Ohio, if you needed to raise, at least my experience, if I needed to raise $200,000 to $400,000, I wasn't related to anybody who was important enough or rich enough or connected enough for a kid from Akron to go raise that kind of money. That's just not going to happen. Last year, 67 firms raised an average of about $500,000 in Northeast Ohio to take their idea into the market. That's how much money, or that's how many companies raised first rounds of capital last year in Northeast Ohio. So not only is Jumpstart a direct investor, but we've also helped to create 8 other funds in the region. So many of you might have heard of this group called the North Coast Angel Fund. So there's an angel group in Cleveland that's now the 5th largest angel group in the country. It has 280 members. Jumpstart put up the founding money to create that angel group because, again, we're investing with money that's really focused on an economic development outcome. We needed to create the next investor that's going to invest for a for-profit basis in these really young companies. So this idea, a great example of kind of the hybrid of advisor and investor. If you have a great idea about a market opportunity, maybe it's not your idea, but you want to invest, or you have an idea about an industry focus, come to us and we can tell you all the early stage deals in Ohio, or in Northeast Ohio, who the entrepreneurs are, what the breakdown of industry is, how much of it is in this kind of manufacturing, how much of it is in this kind of biomedical. So we also are kind of a place that aggregates a lot of data around these innovative ideas. I'm going to spend probably 3 or 4 minutes talking about partnerships. Jumpstart, again, I mentioned, has been working across the country. What I think Jumpstart and some of our peers in Northeast Ohio have figured out better than any other region, partly out of necessity and I think partly out of the DNA of the people, is no one has enough money in and of themselves, whether it's a company, an individual, a county, a foundation, to make the level of change that we need to realize in Northeast Ohio. No one has enough money alone. But if we can figure out a way to collaborate and build tactics and strategies that can leverage what everybody else has, and we don't care about who gets the credit, we really can move the needle. And that's certainly what's happened in Northeast Ohio around the tech startup space. Because now there's a whole range of actors who don't really care about who gets the credit, but we're there trying to figure out how to work together. So I've talked about a lot of these issues. This is just kind of the range of the services that we provide. A lot of it's around funding. Another huge component, which I'm not sure whether you've talked about it yet today, but recruiting talent. Another big challenge in Northeast Ohio for young tech companies is where do they find the product management talent in particular, or the C-level talent that has the ability to accelerate these companies to the next stage. So Jumpstart's had a recruiting function, and of course we do it for very little money or free, attracting C-level talent to these tech startups who, by the way, aren't paying huge salaries, but they're paying market competitive salaries. And so we've attracted a little over 400 people to come work for tech startups in Northeast Ohio over the last 3 years. So even if it's a scenario where, I have an innovative idea in my company, I have no idea where I'm going to find maybe the talent, that's going to come from a different industry than I'm in that could correlate to what I want to do, we could be a resource to help you think through where you could find that talent. Now, maybe you ultimately hire a headhunter, or I'm not saying we'd necessarily land that person perfectly for you, but we have a lot of experience finding people and matching them to new things, new ideas that aren't necessarily fully baked. So this range of services, we also have a whole set of specialized services focused on women and minority and inner city entrepreneurs. And we manage a network of activity, which I'll talk about in a minute. This is just a quick slide on our economic impact, or really it's the economic impact of the entrepreneurs we've helped. It's not our economic impact. These little companies who employ about 3,000 people total today over the last 7 years, with support from the state to Jumpstart of about 11 million. Over 3 years, we've generated a $686 million economic impact to the state. The state's told us for every dollar we give you, you're returning $54 to the state within 18 months. So this idea that now we've been at this 7, 8 years, we've really got it moving. And these companies, this is payroll tax, revenue growth, all the things that are happening in the region. And every one of these companies has patents, has innovations, is able to approach private markets, attract capital. So again, this focus has been super helpful. So if you look at the companies themselves, there's 2 lines here. The top line is Jumpstart manages a network with 17 other entities. So you've probably heard of BioEnterprise and the Austin Bioinnovation Institute, and Magnet is a partner to Jumpstart, who I know is a sponsor here today. But there's 17 entities that the state of Ohio supports. Some of those dollars for those entities flow through Jumpstart, and Jumpstart manages a network of these 17 entities. And on the above the line, the dotted line, if you could see it, those are the number of jobs. Those 17 entities, you might have heard like Bizdom. Dan Gilbert's Business Accelerator has been in the press a lot. There's another Business Accelerator at Shaker Launch House. Probably a lot of you have heard of Shaker Launch House. So we're all interconnected. All these organizations are interconnected, sharing common deal flow, and also sharing resources amongst each other. So in Jumpstart's case, we've historically made investments of $400,000 to $500,000. Well, that's kind of on the high end of the pre-seed space. Other places like the Innovation Fund at Lorain County Community College make investments of $25,000 up to $100,000. So as all these things have been knitted together, we've been able to build an ecosystem of actors that have allowed 5,500 jobs in tech startups to be created since 2007. And in Jumpstart's case, these are just the companies that we've invested in. You can see the numbers there, about 3,000 clients, or 3,000 entrepreneur employees, and $600 million in private capital. So Jumpstart just finished our strategic plan, and actually Gary Shamus and Larry Goddard from SS&G are on Jumpstart's board. So our board has a lot of rigor, and I see a few other. Jim Hickey's up here in front. He's also a Jumpstart board member. So we just went through a 6-month strategic planning process to help us think about what's the next 3 years for our organization. And one of the things that really came out to us as we've thought about maximizing our economic impact is, how do we build more partnerships with a broader set of not just economic development actors, but companies in the region that have the talent, the innovation, the know-how to more quickly leverage the innovation that's in the community and help that innovation realize economic growth. So we're going to be very, very much focused on connecting with a whole new set of companies, a whole new set of stakeholders, and that's one of the reasons why this is such a great room for us, because we've really been focused on the teeny tiny tech startup, 2 people in the basement somewhere with a cure for cancer, but it's going to take 15 years for that thing to be real. Whereas with the businesses you're running, we believe, and when I say we, I mean the system, the economic development system thinks with incremental or modest support and partnership with you, we can actually help your companies grow better, smarter, faster, and probably generate quicker results focusing on established companies than pure startup companies when it comes to calculating economic impact. So this partnership idea, figuring out what are win-wins intellectually and, of course, ultimately from a business perspective is a big part of where we're going in the region. I threw a couple other slides in here just because I think it's important as a taxpayer. you probably don't know any of these details. And that is the Ohio Third Frontier, which has invested about $1.2 billion since 2002 in university research, commercialization, facilities. They spent about $400 million on that, and research facilities at universities across the state. Jumpstart and everything that we do, we have peers across the state. We have 5 other entities, one in Cincinnati, one in Columbus, one in Toledo, one in Dayton, and one in Athens. And collectively, those 6 entities have gotten about $150 million out of the $1.2 billion, but they've generated 65% of the total jobs generated by the whole $1.2 billion. So again, this idea that initiatives, collaborations that are focused on young, innovative ideas / companies are where the economic development is happening, even for partners that are investing as many dollars as the state of Ohio in these kinds of initiatives. So this is again, this entrepreneurial signature program is this 17 organization collaborative in Northeast Ohio that's supporting all these entities, and Jumpstart's kind of the quarterback with that. One other piece I would share on this that I think is really important is mentoring. So we're constantly trying to learn new ideas, new approaches that can help us generate greater outcomes. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Jumpstart launched a mentoring program. So this is a team approach where we get 2, 3, 4 folks in a room to coach a young company or a technologist or something that's really emerging. And we've had huge success. And if there's anybody in the room here that feels like they have a particular area of expertise or a passion to connect with innovative ideas, entrepreneurs, whether they're intrapreneurs that are creating something out of an existing company or pure startups that would have an interest in maybe learning more about our mentoring program, please feel free to approach me. It's a volunteer thing, so our mentors don't get paid. The entrepreneurs don't have to pay for it. But we've been able to impact a good number, about 50 entrepreneurs to date. We have goals to scale it up into the 100 to 150 range over the next year or two. But of course, the quality of the mentors and the quality of the mentees is something that you just can't scale overnight because it is a pretty engaged process. So this is a little bit about our startup network. So there's a whole bunch of entities here, the 17 entities that we help to fund, but also other actors in the community. So, many of you probably don't realize there's 7 cities in Northeast Ohio that have their own hyperlocal seed fund. Alliance, Canton, Worcester, Barberton. They have their own funds that are investing $75,000, $100,000, $150,000 in young, innovative companies in their own cities. I mean, I grew up in Akron, if somebody told me that there'd be a couple $100,000 in Barberton to invest in innovative companies by year 4, 5, or 6 of Jumpstart's existence, I'd say, that's a phenomenal outcome, that we have this regional construct, but we also have the ability to help leaders in a city decide, okay, we want to do something to specifically help companies in our city, but leverage this back office or this capability across the region. We are connected to a much larger system, and I realize this is somewhat of an alphabet soup, but I put it up there to give you context to all the different things that are going on in Northeast Ohio. So Jumpstart's kind of on the bottom right here, but Jobs Ohio, which of course you probably see in the paper a lot, is the governor's initiative. Nortec Bioenterprise, Magnet. We're part of an ecosystem, and again, I think one of the things that, as an outsider, I can understand, it's way too much alphabet soup, and I don't get it, and it seems like there's too many organizations. But as someone who's operating in the system, what I can tell you is these organizations work together in a way that I would have never envisioned 10 years ago. So we really are honing in on efficiencies, effectiveness, how services aren't duplicated, how we can leverage each other's relationships and knowledge. So we are part of this larger system. I wanted to give a plug to a new program, or a relatively new program that's come out from Magnet called PRISM. So many of you in the room may be familiar with this. This is an initiative that's focused on small and medium manufacturers in Northeast Ohio. Of course, manufacturing still is a huge driver and is the largest single aggregate industry in the region in terms of economic impact. So recently, Magnet has come out with this program that knits together a lot of the collaborators in the different regions, but also brings the universities and research partners to be collaborators with Magnet, and that group together is going out into the marketplace and helping manufacturers solve key issues around innovation or growth opportunities in either their product development process, their manufacturing process. And so this is a great example for Jumpstart of, some of our companies are in manufacturing. Out of our 76 companies, there's probably 10 to 15 that are envisioning, or already 10 to 15% that are envisioning or moving into manufacturing, but a lot of our companies aren't in manufacturing because they're high tech and they're trying to solve different issues. But going forward with this partnership idea and leveraging the capabilities of these organizations, these economic development organizations, this is a great opportunity for us to come together. What's a neat, simple example of that? Jumpstart has expertise on access to capital. So there's a lot of manufacturers out there that maybe are at cash flow break even or modestly profitable, but they don't have the dollars to fund a growth strategy. Jumpstart has dollars and envisions even having even more dollars that can help fund growth strategies. So again, if we're the capital folks and they're the subject matter experts in some particular business process, together we can generate greater outcomes as we work in a partnership. So fundamentally what PRISM does, again, they target small and medium manufacturers who believe they have a big opportunity, and they help bring resources. Some of those resources are, PRISM engages private sector consultants to come in and address those issues. In other cases, PRISM or Magnet has the capability to deliver that expertise themselves directly to the customer. So, many of you, hopefully some of you have heard of PRISM in the market. I think you're going to hear more and more about how Northeast Ohio is going to focus on gazelle companies. I'm not sure if everybody knows what a gazelle company is, but from an economic point of view or from an academic point of view, a gazelle is a firm that has the potential to double in revenue over 5 years. And if, kind of taking a step back, as someone who's been involved in the tech space, we've probably spent 70 to 80% of the region's economic development, at least new region economic development resources, on tech startups. And we've generated a huge outcome. Now we're going to start, as a region, being more and more focused on how to help existing companies in addition to tech startups. And PRISM is an initiative that's really going to lead that. So hopefully that's it for me today. I'm happy to take questions. But if nothing else, I hope this has stimulated some ideas about how you could approach myself and Jumpstart and the network I represent to help you think through how you can leverage an innovative idea that you brought with you today. So you can see, my email is ray.leach@Jumpstart Inc. I apologize for the font there, but ray.leach@jumpstartinc.org. I do, 30 breakfasts and lunches every month, so, I'm happy to connect and help you leverage what you're thinking about. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, if there are any. Yeah.
Question that I have is, there's all these organizations out there, and a lot of them do a lot of great things. But there seems to also be a lot of confusion in the marketplace, at least with many people, business owners that I've spoken with. Who does what? And
right.
I was wondering, is there a quarterback or a clearinghouse or someone who
Yeah.
can really be the main point of referral? And I don't know, maybe that's Magnet now with their PRISM program, but...
Well, first, consider me that for you. I'm happy to. It can be complicating. Everyone in the system, the intention and the purpose, everybody in the system that connects with whatever part of the economy should really be that quarterback. Now, ultimately, if it's a manufacturing business and Magnet would be a logical source as well. So there is a process going, in terms of, there's so many organizations. How are we thinking about optimizing outcomes? Well, I've talked a lot about collaboration and the way these organizations collaborate. There is constant evaluation on the best and highest purpose for each of these organizations. And as an example, right now, there's a pretty engaged dialogue with leadership across the region saying, okay, how do we further optimize and leverage the competencies and capabilities of these organizations? And if there is any duplicative aspects, which there's very few now, but if there are, how do we basically optimize the system? So it might seem like these things are running amok just because you're not involved in it on an everyday basis. But as somebody who runs one of these organizations and is accountable for every dollar we get, to give you an idea, last year Jumpstart wrote 185 grant reports for the dollars we raised the year before. So the accountability on this money is extremely high for the dollars that we've won, which most of those have come from the third frontier, so the process is incredibly rigorous. But there is a great, and I should have brought some, there is a great reference book that Team NEO has put out. We can get copies of it to the SS&G team that actually describes what everybody does and shows the outcomes of each of these organizations over the last couple years. And it just came out in the last few months. It's the first time that the regional economic development entities have actually invested the time, energy, and resources to put it into one document. So that also could be really helpful to increase the understanding of how these different organizations work and leverage each other.
Right. Well, my question wasn't so much targeted towards the accountability, although it's good to know. I'm just saying, when we as business owners get approached by individuals who want to start up a business or they have an idea, all I'm looking for is, and I've referred them to virtually all of you guys up there,
Right.
but it would be nice to know, all right, send everyone to Jumpstart or send everyone to Magnet, because you're right, I'm not the expert, and I don't intend on becoming the expert. But
well,
I
feel
guess
free
we
to
could just
think
throw
of,
them your way. And
yeah, feel free to think of Jumpstart as being that place to help that entrepreneur, that innovator, find where the resources are.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm Mike Boy.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Ray, for all the great information. Question for you is thinking about all the companies that Jumpstart is backing right now and the vast list of companies in your portfolio, is there anything that you wish that business people in the area would do to find a way to use whatever talents or expertise they have to help those companies get through inflection points? Is there anything that we should think about doing?
Absolutely. I'd say the system itself has not done a good job of leveraging the knowledge and talent in the community at all. There's a few exceptions, and maybe Jumpstart's mentoring program is a great example of at least an evolving way to do that. Realistically, we need to figure out as a community, we need to figure out a way to engage 500, 1,000, 1,500 people as opposed to where we are now, to help these firms. And so there is some significant conversation in and around this topic now, and I'd look for things in 2014 that are really what we're talking about is how do we optimize a bottom-up execution strategy. I mean, just like in almost anything in business, if it was top-down, it either has changed to bottom-up or it's in the process of changing to bottom-up, at least in the social dimension. So how can organizations like Jumpstart do a better job of engaging the expertise in the community in an effective way, cost-effective and fun way for the community? We have not done a good job on that yet, but that is a top priority going forward. So I would say stay tuned. And if you do have, I mean, probably as I've already pitched once before, if you have particular ideas, one of the around how to do that or what might be an area of expertise that you have that could help provide some leadership to this, because this is a little bit more bottom up, so we're really looking for leaders in the community who we can bring resources to say, rather than Jumpstart going out and doing this, here's Joe or here's Cindy, they have a passion for this part of the industry. We know there's a market demand for that insight and that expertise. How do we back those individuals who can play a larger leadership role in that particular topic or in that particular industry in the region? So thank you very much.